We are recording, so we'll have a replay for everybody. I also want to say thank you for taking the time this evening to get on the line. I can see we've got people coming on. So again, my name is Tiffany, and we are going to get started. Tonight, we're talking about autoimmune matrix and ways that we can heal and begin to heal from autoimmune conditions, things you can do to prevent an autoimmune from triggering if autoimmune runs in your family. These are things that are very near and dear to my own life, my own heart, and the work that I love to do. So you may not know this looking at me, but I actually am diagnosed with 4 different autoimmune conditions, including celiac disease, endometriosis, Crohn's disease, and some other stuff, and I have food allergies. So what we're talking about tonight is how I live my life on a daily basis. It's what gets me through, what gets me energy, ways that I recover, and ways that I keep my autoimmunes in remission so I don't need to go back on pharmaceutical medication. So like I said, we're going to kick off. We're going to get started. I invite you to stay with us through the end of the webinar tonight. I have a lot of content because this is one of the things I am very passionate about. But stay with us. I have a special offer for you at the end and an opportunity for you to get a free consultation. So with that, let me get everything up and running here. I've got notes and, well, maybe the notes are going to load. There we go. And I've got slides, and it's going to be awesome. So thank you again for joining us. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time this evening to join us online to get information to help yourself or to help others. That is, makes me grateful, makes me really appreciate you. So I'm going to share my screen just so we can get to the slides. Let me do that. Give me 1 second. All right, it is kind of like go time, right? So autoimmune matrix is what we're talking about. You guys imagine, your health is expressed as a triangle. I love to talk about health as a tree, but tonight we're going to talk about health being expressed as a triangle. And at the base of the triangle, below the triangle, the very root of that triangle are your genes, right? There's 23,000 of those. And they basically are your genes, your DNA, for another word for it. Each of us have inherited those from our parents. We've inherited the genes that we have, but it is our life, our whole life, that can make those genes turn on, turn off. And we're going to talk about things tonight that activate the genes, okay? And can turn them on, turn them off, and so forth. So if you think about yourself, your body for a minute, and you think about how your health is expressed as a triangle, you have at the different points of that triangle a chemical self, a physical self, and a mental self. So we're going to talk about those 3 different things: the chemical self, the physical self, and the mental self. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about autoimmunity and the chemicals that can cause it, the ways to heal it. And a lot of this will make sense as we start going through. I want you to know that this is about 90 minutes of content. So again, it's a lot. I get that. So why I say that is I want you to grab a cup of tea, grab a water, a pen, and some paper so that you can take notes along the way. I want you to have this information for your own healing so that you can find a better way for your own health and your journey into health. So if we've never met, I need to stop saying the word so tonight. If we've never met, my name is Tiffany Hinton. I am a certified functional medicine health coach. What does that mean? That means that I went back to school, got a certification in using functional medicine, holistic approaches, thinking of the body as a system made up of systems versus individual components, that allows me to coach women and men and others on their journey for better health. I honestly believe everybody deserves optimal health. I'm also an international best-selling author. I'm a business owner of Thrive Clean and GF Mom Certified. I've got 3 girls. At one point in my life, I was called a super mom. We had 3 kids under 3. We had 3 in diapers all at the same time. It was a little chaotic, but we are through that phase of life. a gluten-free lifestyle expert, and then I talked about the coaching. I am truly blessed to be able to do what I love, to be able to spend this time educating and helping other people succeed in their health. I will tell you, it was not always like this. My own autoimmunity journey, which makes me super passionate about the autoimmune matrix, started when I was 11. My triggering event started at age 11. It caused the stress in my life for my genes to turn on for my celiac disease and for the Crohn's disease. By the age of 14, it was almost debilitating. And by the time I was 18, my intestines were bleeding because they were just so eroded and so inflamed that I got to where in my early 20s, I was questioning why God put me on earth. And I will say that after several years of just kind of questioning and wondering, life opened up for me. I found a doctor who introduced me to holistic practices, introduced me to what it meant to think about, right, those three dynamics of food and wellness and spirituality and how that all fits together, and introduced me to functional medicine at its root. And I'm forever grateful for him. And I'm grateful because it brought me back to a place where I could then move forward and help and others succeed, right? Help them succeed. So with no further ado, we're going to jump into the material. I will let you know that if you are live tonight on this webinar, there is a chat box. So as we go through tonight, if you've got questions, if you've got comments, if I ask you something and you need to answer, put it in the chat box. At the end of the webinar, I will answer questions. We'll do a small Q&A, and I will talk about the special offer we have for you. I am truly, truly happy and just so grateful tonight. I'm super grateful because my husband is running defense. He is watching the children tonight. He's a great supporter in my life, and I thank God every day for him. So it's a great blessing to be here with you guys this evening. The really nice thing too is we're all virtual. So if you need to pause it and you need to come back to it, you have that ability. And it just makes it very, very awesome for us this evening to be able to share this information. All right, so we're going to talk about this triangle of health, right? The triangle of health represents components of the autoimmune matrix, those three components that we talked about. It is understood that autoimmune diseases are caused by chemical, physical, and mental influences that turn the certain genes on or off, just like a light switch. Okay, so autoimmunity is bred by lifestyle choices and behaviors. So if you go back to the functional medicine tree, your roots of your tree are your environment. It's your things that you choose or don't choose and the behaviors around you. And that again goes up the core of the tree, which is the DNA, and then affects the systems of the tree, which are our systems in our body, like our neurological system and our gastro system and all these other things. But in this triangle that we have of chemical, physical, and emotional, right, self, those are where we have the ability to choose differently to inform how our body reacts. So let's go back. Where am I at on my notes? Okay, so for example, your chemical self can influence the physical self, and the physical self can influence the chemical self, right? They go back and forth, vice versa. Same thing with emotional. The influences of chemical, physical, and mental can be determine our health, but they can also be determinant of our moods, of our hormones. They can, when we're going to talk a lot about this, it's also equally empowering that you can instill a lot of hope in those that suffer from autoimmune disease, because we know how to turn the genes off. We know how to put things back in remission using a lot of stuff we're going to talk about this evening. For the most part, conventional doctors today will solely focus on the chemical components, using medications to treat the chemical. There are endless ways that they can influence the body using the standards of care, artificially manipulating inflammation, artificially manipulating our hormones. They artificially manipulate other chemical processes within the body. And this can all be done with the common goal of covering up the symptoms. I personally can tell you that I covered up the symptoms of my celiac disease and Crohn's disease for about 14 years by taking 25 different pills, pharmaceuticals a day. But what resulted of that was me having a ruptured colon, being malnutritioned, having a whole bunch of bleeding issues, and infertility. So hiding the symptom, getting away from the symptom, was not treating the cause. And if you know me in what I do in and outside of the healthcare industry, it is root cause analysis. It is getting at what is the cause of the problem. Let's resolve that. Let's put a countermeasure in for the cause of the problem, and then the problem will go away. The symptoms will go away, and you don't necessarily cover up the issue. It's not about applying a Band-Aid. It's about treating the problem and then watching it resolve itself. And that just makes me very, very excited. So on the other hand, you've got the functional medicine practitioners like myself and the coaches, and you've got functional medicine doctors that address the origins of the disease. We love to ensure that there is a comprehensive and effective treatment plan. We love to ensure that the symptoms go away because we actually treat the problem and not just disguise its the treatment just to hide the symptoms, right? It's just not a disguise of the symptoms. We actually get to the problem and treat the problem. The other thing most conventional Western medicine doctors today do is they solely focus on that chemical component. They don't always focus on the physical self or the emotional self. They focus on the chemical, and they focus on the chemical components using medication. There's an endless way to influence the body using the standards of care, such as artificially manipulating the inflammation, the hormones, or other essential chemical processes within the body. This is all done with one common goal. The goal is to cover up the symptoms. Okay, and I know we just talked about this, but I actually wanted just to kind of you guys to know about, like, it doesn't resolve the problem. It's a failure because it doesn't treat the issue. You have to actually get at the root of the issue. And sometimes getting at the root of the issue, you actually do need a coach because it is hard. It is an emotional trigger. It is a behavior pattern. It is an environment that you have to change. And doing that change puts us on a change curve. It's like going through grief. It is hard, and you have to embrace the change after you've decided to resist the change. Okay. So the functional approach when it comes to treating chemical, because we're going to start talking about chemical first, chemical self, the chemical components of health will be a large majority for the part of what we discuss. Okay, we're going to probably half of the time we spend together, we're going to discuss the chemical side, the chemical self, and the chemical components of the body. The chemistry is, in a sense, where we find the healing a lot of times. The physical and the emotional will help. They pair very nicely together, but in the chemistry is where we find the healing. And so in the chemistry, we have to start to look at what actually enters the body. Food, vitamins, minerals, our water, our pesticides enter the body, preservatives enter the body, normally through our food, dyes, and there's so many more other things that enter our body. Other environmental factors that you have to think about that you actually have control over is your exposure to bacteria, your exposure to parasites, your exposure to toxins. You can kind of pick and choose which toxins you're going to allow in your environment, on your body, inside your body. Your allergens, you have a choice over those, and you also have control over your microorganisms that are living in your gut to some extent. And we'll talk about how you can actually manipulate and control some of those microorganisms. The common theme throughout the triangle of health is your control. Your chemical self is influenced by what enters the body, and in turn, the chemical influence on your genes get activated. That's where the light switches of epigenetics can turn on and turn off, okay? We're gonna talk a lot about common chemicals and nutrient densities coming up. I'm gonna take a drink of tea. There's a lot of talking. So we talk through chemical self. In the words of Dr. Osborne, I like Dr. Osborne. He actually runs a website called the Gluten-Free Society. He has a lot of great information out there. So he actually says, the importance of nutrition can't be argued. It is absolutely critical. And I would completely agree. Food is medicine. You've got to get the nutrients first, and then you can do other things like supplements and clean up environment, but you've got to have the basic nutrients first. The essential nutrients found in food, such as your vitamins, your minerals, your amino acids, your carbohydrates, and even your healthy fats, are necessary for you to have proper body function. Myself, when I didn't have the right nutrients, I had infertility issues. I am the smallest child in my family. I stopped growing. Everybody else is 6 feet and taller. There's a lot of stuff that went on in my own body because I didn't have the proper nutrients. And so that's where food comes in, and food becomes your medicine. Each nutrient has its own job, and everyone's needs are very specific to themselves. And that's where our health becomes very unique. It's one thing to consider in the why behind your deficiencies. There are many things that can cause nutrient deficiencies, but it may be due to you not consuming enough of the foods that your body needs for that specific nutrient. Or it could be because you have a gut that's impaired, so therefore you're not able to absorb the correct nutrients because you have a gut issue, and we'll talk about some of the gut issues. Or it could just be the result of an existing autoimmune condition is causing you to have issues not being able to absorb your vitamins, your nutrients, your minerals, okay? Most common nutrient deficiencies actually happen in a few areas. So the top nutrient deficiencies are vitamin D, and we're going to talk a little bit about vitamin D itself, vitamin B12, zinc, omega-3 fatty acid, and believe it or not, the fifth top most common deficiency when it comes to nutrients is water. Most of us are dehydrated. We're not drinking enough water. So unfortunately, the conventional procedure for measuring these levels when it comes to nutrients is to do a serum test. Now, a serum test is an easy blood draw, but most of the time, if you've had one, they've had you fast, therefore there's no food in your system. And the other interesting thing is that a serum test cannot tell you your fluctuation of your vitamins throughout your day. It cannot tell you how much you're necessarily storing or how much you have after you eat. So it's not really the best indicator when it comes to nutrient levels. And so we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the different blood tests that you can do. But your basic serum testing is that. It's just a basic test, a general direction. It may not give you a viable real number. That being said, it's important to have the conversations with your doctors to ensure you are getting tested though for nutrients, not just standard liver testing or not just white blood cell, red blood cell testing. You do want to have some specific tests when it comes to your nutrient, and your doctors can order those, or I can help you order those. And later in this presentation, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna review some of the testing procedures, and you can ask for specific testing when it comes to nutrient deficiencies. Most of our immune cells have a specific vitamin D receptor, which help modulate the immune activity and response. And it's actually no surprise that clear connections have been found between autoimmune disease and deficiencies of vitamin D along with other vitamins. There are a few really important things important diseases that can result from a vitamin D deficiency. One being type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and MS, multiple sclerosis. Those are very common when you have to be triggered when you have a vitamin D deficiency. And there also, vitamin D is very easy for us to increase in ourselves. You can get vitamin D by eating salmon. You can get vitamin D by tuna, eggs, mushrooms. You can get a vitamin D fortified cereal if you want. The other interesting, and I love the way to get vitamin D naturally, is to go outside without sunblock on. Yet we are advised, right, a lot of times to limit our sun exposure and to wear UV protectant. That to me makes no sense because then your body is not able to produce vitamin D naturally. I honestly coach a lot of my clients to go out for 20 minutes a day without sunscreen protectant on, like expose your shoulders, expose maybe your upper part of your body or your face to the sun to allow yourself to get natural vitamin D. Because adding sunscreen and staying out of the sun doesn't help us get this happy hormone, right? Vitamin D is actually a hormone, and it makes us happy. It makes us excited. It makes us have energy. And so it's really important. There are other medications that a lot of people take that can cause deficiencies. So I'm going to quickly run through this list. Okay, the interesting thing here is that taking certain prescriptions to cover a symptom is counterproductive because you're causing a deficiency in your vitamins and your minerals in your body that you actually need to treat the condition instead of just hide the symptoms. So you really have to think about, when you are taking a prescription medication, what is the lowest dosage you could possibly take? And is it really needed if you actually made the behavior improvements and the changes to your environment and your health triangle? Is that pharmaceutical still really needed for your health? So let's go through a couple of common ones. If you are taking a common blood pressure medication, you could be deficient in vitamin B1, B6, vitamin C, magnesium, calcium, potassium, zinc, sodium, CoQ10, and melatonin. So you really need to think, like, how else could you lower your blood pressure holistically? And if you're looking for options, we should do a consultation, because there's a lot of ways to do that holistically without having to take a lot of blood pressure medication. Another common medication that they give people in the US is cholesterol medication, right? And cholesterol medication causes deficiencies in vitamin A, B2, B6, B12, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, folate, beta carotene, iron, and CoQ10. And yes, I just rattled off a big old list, but a lot of times you don't need the cholesterol medicine. You need to have a particle sizing test, and you need to shift your diet, and you will never need the cholesterol meds, okay? My husband, case in point. And we can always tell you more about that story if you're interested. Okay, common diabetes medication will cause deficiencies in B12, folic acid, and CoQ10. If you are on an anti-inflammatory medication, you may have deficiencies in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, B12, folic acid, potassium, iron, manganese, and zinc. Again, this is why your nutrient testing for your blood is so important, to know where you're at on what levels, because these impact your whole health. They also impact your gene expression, as we talked about. If you're taking heartburn medication or acid reflux medication, you're going to have potential deficiencies in vitamin D, B12, folic acid, beta carotene, calcium, iron, and zinc. And then if you're on a hormone replacer, a lot of people end up thinking they have endometriosis, therefore they should have a hysterectomy. I am somebody that will tell you, no, 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 that is not the correct way to solve endometriosis, because even though you have a hysterectomy, doesn't mean the endometrial implants go away. It doesn't mean that they don't go somewhere else. It's not the correct way to do it. But if you've had a hysterectomy, now you're on hormone replacement, you potentially are going to have deficiencies in vitamin B2, vitamin B, vitamin B6, B12, vitamin C, folic acid, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. And those are all very important. You need those for your body to operate and function correctly. So please note, this is not a go-to for medication. This is not, do not take your meds. It's just general guidelines for you to know what you might want to test in your nutrients, so that you are ensuring you're eating the right foods and taking the right supplementation to ensure your nutrients are correct, and that you're working with your doctors to make sure that you've got this balance figured out, okay? Now, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We're gonna talk about toxins. We are exposed to toxins regularly, and many are often unavoidable. These include, but are not limited to, your pesticides, your GMOs, your air pollutants, your heavy metals, and chemical contaminants that are just out in our environment or in our water, right? Toxins can cause many, many health complications. Some of those complications that you get from toxins are fatigue, muscle aches, joint pain, sinus congestion, or even that post-nasal drip that people are like, oh, it's just hay fever, it's just spring, whatever. It could just be toxins in the air that you're absorbing. You get headaches, bloating, and autoimmunity. So one of the ways that you can reduce and prevent the toxic overload on our body is to minimize the amount of toxins we're exposed to by choosing organic, non-GMO foods, adding an air purifier to your house, like an air purification system, water filters on your tap water, on your showers. Your shower should have a filter as well, or a whole house filter. And then moving to toxic-free household items in your cleaning products, in your body care, in just there's so many things like getting non-flame retardant clothing and sheets, because flame retardant is a toxin that does a lot of damage. It can lead to dementia and Parkinson's issues. So there are things that you can do, but you want to start to reduce that toxic load. Part of what we're going to offer you at the end is a challenge week. And one of the things we're going to focus on during the challenge week is toxic load reduction, okay? What's really cool, and we are so lucky and so blessed that there are so many ways to monitor our nutrient deficiencies. We can monitor toxic buildup, we can monitor the physical imbalances. And so I'm gonna talk through kind of just a list of different tests that you might wanna consider if you have an autoimmune condition, or you are on an autoimmune spectrum, or your parents had autoimmunity. Some of these tests might be vital for you to track so you know where your nutrients are. If you are interested in ordering these tests, I can help you find a way to do that, or I can connect you to a functional medicine doctor that can help you order them as well, okay? So the first test is a lymphocyte peripheral test. This test is for nutrient storage versus what is simply done as a blood serum test. There is more concrete measures with the proliferation test, and it gets you a sense of kind of what are your actual nutrients, how is your body storing them, and how are they being utilized, okay? Another test that you might want to look at is an iodine loading test. The iodine loading test measures your iodine status and your deficiencies or possible deficiencies of iodine. Iodine is really important for people that have thyroid conditions, or you have a history of thyroid issues. You would want to keep track of your iodine. The 25-OHD is actually a vitamin D3 test. It tests for a very effective way to measure your vitamin D3. Your iron, when you're getting an iron panel, you want to get an iron panel with ferritin, because you want to know how much iron your body is actually using and how much it's storing. The important part to make sure when you're doing an iron panel is that it says ferritin serum. You want the ferritin to be measured. Most doctors don't order a ferritin test. You have to actually specifically request the ferritin test, okay? And then you want to get a CBC. The CBC is your complete blood count. The CBC is the most comprehensive blood test that is offered, and it checks for anemia, it does liver panels, it checks many, many things, but you can, or most doctors will commonly include a CBC. You can get a homocysteine test as well. This is an indirect marker for the nutritional status of your B2, B6, B12, and folate. So if you were taking a cholesterol med, or you're taking a high blood pressure medication, or an antacid, you probably want to get a homocysteine test at least once a year, if not every 6 months. Then there's a hemoglobin A1C, commonly known as the A1C. This detects your average blood sugar. After that, the test that you would, the next one that we can talk about is the C-reactive protein. This is an identifiable marker for inflammation in the body. It doesn't tell us what is inflamed. It just tells us that you have a level of inflammation in the body. And so if people are constantly complaining of joint pain, bloating, just gastro issues or something, or mucus, whether it's mucus in the head or mucus in the stools, getting a C-reactive protein to track your inflammatory marker is a great way to track that and see if you need further testing. And then you should also have an insulin test run. Insulin affects the body in a number of different ways. This test actually is measuring the stress on the pancreas based on the amount of sugar that's being found in your bloodstream. Okay, those are a lot of tests. I get it. Now, we're going to move into what I really, really like, and that is gut health, and yeah, AKA the gateway to your health. Like, it all starts in your gut. So to properly diagnose nutrient deficiencies, or most health complications in general, it is super important to rule out any issues associated with gut function. If your gut is not functioning properly, it is likely that your body will not be able to absorb the right nutrients. You're going to be malnutritioned, or you're just not going to have the right nutrient balance because your gut is not acting the way it should, and it's not getting the absorption it should. So therefore, eating the right foods, taking the correct supplements may go unnoticed, and you might get frustrated and think like, this isn't working, my numbers aren't coming up, and that means we need to go in and we need to do some gut repair. So we have these microvilli, right, that live in our gut. They actually need to be there in order to do the absorption along with some other stuff. There are some major core functions that happen in our gut, including your digestion, which I think most of us are aware of. Your immune response happens in your gut first. Your nutrients are absorbed. Your hormones are regulated from your gut. So just because you're moody or you have PMS or you've got something else going on, it started in your gut. You got acne on your face, you think it's hormone related, it started in your gut. So we got to go back to the gut and we got to fix the gut. Vitamin production. So your B12 is made in your gut. Detoxification is happening in the gut, and mood management. I was actually talking to the girls earlier this week about how their things that they eat affect the microbiome in their gut, who then tells their brain how to behave. So whether you're having withdrawals from sugar, or you're having a stress or anxiety, or you're spazzing out, it's probably because you are not eating, or your gut is not balanced enough, and it's creating these mood swings. It can also create depression and some other stuff. So you got to go back to the gut. Above all, the gut's sole purpose is to ensure you're absorbing the good and excreting the bad, right? And we do that through digestion, with the liver functions, part of that, all of that kind of all goes together. If it's balanced and you're absorbing the good and excreting the bad, and that's really balanced and it's not disrupted, the majority of your health will be drastically improved, right? If your balance is disrupted, you're going to have complications all over your body. You're going to have issues. You're going to get headaches. You're going to, who knows, you're going to have all this stuff going on. So it's so important. Do you guys realize that there's 10 times the amount of bacteria in our body than there is in even our own cells? And the majority of that is housed in your digestive system. So yes, your skin is your largest organism, but the next second largest thing is your intestinal tract, and that's where the majority of the bacteria that helps us live is housed. So it's important to have a well-balanced working gut, and it's getting the foods it needs to actually have success. Now, fortunately, our gut has defenses, or firewalls, right? If you're thinking like software, that help properly do its job. There is different parts of the gut, and we'll talk about a few of these. There is a gastro-associated lymph node tissue. Short name is GALT tissue in the gut. The gut's immune system, and in fact, about 70% of our entire immune system is housed in that GALT. It's in that lymph tissue in the gut. And then there are tight junctions. And tight junctions, these are super tiny little proteins that are responsible for holding the gut cells together. And when these tight junctions start to break down, your gut starts to look like cheesecloth, and they call that leaky gut, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Then you have mucosal IgA in your gut, and otherwise known as immunoglobulin IgA. And it's an antibody, but it's considered our first line of defense. So if toxins do get in your gut, if you accidentally eat something that might have been a little moldy, but you didn't realize it, that IgA, that antibody is supposed to go in and like clean it up, and then you're supposed to poop it out, right? And you're not supposed to get sick from it. It's when it's not working correctly that you might end up with food poisoning, or you might end up with something else. Then we have friendly bacteria, okay? And the friendly bacteria is like some of the stuff that it's in a probiotic or a prebiotic. Those are friendly bacteria. Those friendly bacteria are in our body, help produce our vitamins. They help do the digestion. They help produce the correct hormones and the mood hormones, and they do all this other stuff. The bacteria can communicate with the GALT, warning it of potential danger, which is really, that's kind of that hormone talking through the body and communicating back to the brain. Then you've also got stomach acid, and the acid in your stomach is essential for digestion and absorbing of nutrients. All of these different things work together to promote gut health and to turn us into healthy humans, right? With great immunity. When these things are not working together, that is where we start to have problems, and that's where our health starts to break down and we end up with autoimmunity. So let's talk about some of the things that can cause damage to the gut. There are several different components. I've got a whole list, First and foremost, your standard American diet, your processed, boxed food, your food colorings, your food dyes, all of that is going to damage your gut. Chemicals such as pesticides, preservatives, heavy metals, food dyes, GMOs, glyphosate, which is Roundup, and then microbial transglutamate. So if you guys look up microbial transglutamate, it's in chicken, it's in some other things, that will tear up your gut. Tom O'Brien's actually doing some new research on that, and it is it's kind of scary actually. It's not just amazing, it's just scary what it actually can do to your body, the transglutamates. Infections can alter your gut, whether it's bacterial infection, a virus infection, a parasite, or yeast overgrowth, like a candida or a SIBO. Those can cause you to have gut damage. Gluten and other grains can cause you to have gut damage, especially if they're treated with chemicals or a drying agent. Food allergies can cause gut damage because if your skin is having a reaction, you're having the same reaction on the inside of your intestine. So therefore, you probably could have a rash, you could have swelling, you could have eczema inside and eczema outside. Excessive medications. Aggressive exercise can also cause gut damage, and then chronic stress. And these are just some of the main proponents that can cause leaky gut syndrome and other harmful conditions in your gut and digestive system itself. So leaky gut, I love explaining leaky gut, but leaky gut, I mentioned cheesecloth earlier. It's where those tight junctions between the intestinal cells begin to open up due to the protein breaking down from agitation, basically. For some of us, we eat gluten enough, it turns into sandpaper, it scrapes away the walls, it opens up these tight junctions. And then what happens is the bacteria and the chemicals and the toxins start to leak outside of the digestive tract, and eventually they get inside the bloodstream, and then eventually they can get into the brain, which is a whole nother topic. And it can signal a flood of immune antibodies to come and attack and to try to go after these things that are like foreign invaders because it doesn't recognize them because they've gotten outside of the intestinal tract. So whether it's a protein or it's an undigested amino acid or something, and now it's in the bloodstream where it's not supposed to be, and so the immune system comes and they try to attack it. This can increase your allergic reactions. It can cause you to have intolerances or sensitivities to food. The cycle will continue, and ultimately it will lead to autoimmunity. So testing your IgGs can be kind of important if you have not been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, but if your IgGs continue to keep growing and evolving and getting worse, you potentially might be on a path to autoimmune. It's important to know what is specifically irritating your gut. And so we're going to talk about some of the gut irritants in coming up, okay? So things that could be damaging your gut, first and foremost, are different medications, and there is a reason. And it's crucially that you're aware of these potential risks. It's not that they're all going to get you. It's just there are risks, and I want you to be aware of them. So antibiotics actually are the number one. First of all, they kill not just the bad stuff, but they kill the good bacteria as well. They destroy the good bacteria needed for your digestion. They cripple the vitamin synthesis, and they can actually cause a risk of yeast overgrowth. So you need antibiotics, right, to kill some diseases and to kill certain bacteria, but then you need to do gut repair immediately or while you're taking the antibiotics. You need to continually reseed. And we've got some great products that we partner with that actually will help you with the reseeding of your gut and putting the great bacteria back in. You also need to really think, like, do I need the antibiotic? Because there are certain things that we are prescribed an antibiotic for that really don't treat it, right? Like a virus, you can't really take an antibiotic for a virus. It's not going to help you, and it's just going to hinder your body being able to go after it. Common pain medication has been found to erode the mucosal lining of the stomach and the small intestine, which will contribute to intestinal permeability, which then could turn into leaky gut. Acid reflux medication, Prilosec, some of those others, I can't even think of names right now, Tums, those antacids, right? The acid reflux medications block stomach acid production, but in turn, they hinder the digestion and the absorption, often leading to nutrient deficiencies. So there are other ways to treat acid that you have, or that pain that you think is acid reflux, so you don't have the damage to the gut. And then antidepressants can negatively affect the neurotransmitters in the gut. And so your gut may say, hey, I made a bunch of B12, I better get happy. And then you're on an antidepressant, so the neurotransmitters in the gut can't respond the correct way. And again, you're not actually helping your body depending on what you have going on in your health. But work with your functional medicine doctor around that stuff, and they can help you figure all of that out. Let's talk about gluten for a minute. I mean, I am gluten-free mom certified, so we have to talk about gluten because gluten and autoimmunity have a huge connection. Gluten was the first medically proven cause of autoimmune disease back in 1952, is when they linked gluten and autoimmune together. That was about the same time we had a banana diet, and there was a bunch of other stuff going on in the celiac world. But since then, plenty of research has backed this up. Gluten allergies and sensitivities have been increasingly becoming more common. And research has been implying that gluten can even cause adverse health effects in people that don't even have an autoimmune condition. It can still cause a problem. So gluten, in my opinion, is for no one, especially now that it's sprayed with drying agents and it's really, really toxic. So you ask why, right? Why is gluten so bad? Gluten itself produces a protein called zonulin. The zonulin directly affects the lining of the intestines, the lining, right? And so that intestinal lining will then break down and lead to leaky gut over time. The antibodies that are initially produced to attack the gliadin, which is one of the proteins in the gluten, they're the gluten, like the gliadin is one of the gluten building blocks, okay? The antibodies that are produced to attack the gliadin can leach out of the GI tract and into the bloodstream because you've got the holes that open up. Once that leaches, the body reacts with the secondary inflammatory chemicals as a defense mechanism, and then you've got your body attacking other parts of your body, and you've just got this body tissue breaking down in other places. So you could have joint tissue breaking down, you could have muscle stuff breaking down, you could even have brains breaking down, and now you've got Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So gluten in general has a lot of research now backing it up that it's just not good for us. So if you are already with an autoimmune condition, or you're on the autoimmune spectrum, or somebody in your family has autoimmune and you're concerned about getting it, one of the things that you need to do pretty much immediately, one of the actions you can take, is to just go gluten-free. It will help you. So when it comes to food allergies, there are other things in food allergies, but food allergies are often commonly ignored when it comes to autoimmunity, but they can cause autoimmunity, and they can cause that light switch in your gene to go on or off depending on what you're doing. So if you have food allergies, you need to stop eating those foods. If you have medication allergies, surgical allergies, chemical allergies, mold allergies, or allergies to additives of anything, you need to remove that from your system, right? Because this is about chemical, and those things that you're allergic to alter the chemical self in your body and keep you from having optimal health. All untreated allergies can cause serious health complications, including turning on an autoimmune disease. So fortunately, there are many ways to test for allergies. You can do skin testing, you can do blood testing, lung function testing. I love patch testing. My sister recently had patch testing done and finally figured out why she was having all these issues. She's allergic to cinnamon. And then you can do food challenges, and often in the form of elimination diets. And those can be really, really hard. So a lot of times it's better to do blood testing, skin testing, and patch testing, and then do the food challenge. But if you don't have the financial money to do the other kind of testing, food challenging can be very inexpensive and very effective. Heavy metals. So there are certain heavy metals that really cause autoimmune conditions to be so much worse. And those include lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, fluoride, so you need a gluten or a fluoride-free toothpaste, bromine, and chlorine. They are all incredibly dangerous to your health and immunity. Unfortunately, we are exposed to all of these in the air we breathe, the water we drink, and even the food we eat. The most alarming way toxic metals affects our health is by competing with beneficial minerals for the binding sites of our cells. So this leads us to the deficiencies of minerals that we need, like magnesium and selenium and things like that, because the toxic metals have binded and there's no open for the good mineral to come through. And so if it goes unnoticed for an extended period of time, it can lead to autoimmunity. Okay. Fluoride itself, I actually know somebody who died from fluoride poisoning, and it was very, very sad. It was a bad story, but fluoride consumption has become an increasingly more prominent issue, and it's often put in our public water. So you want to get a filter that can filter out fluoride, or you want to go back to well water. It's encouraged at your dental routines. We don't do fluoride at all. All of my girls don't get fluoride. I don't do fluoride. We don't do fluoride in our toothpaste. We make sure that we buy fluoride free because fluoride is so toxic. Research is suggesting that massive amounts can contribute to autoimmune thyroid disease, brain damage, and it can displace the iodine, which can then contribute later on to more thyroid issues. Now, iodine is important for your thyroid as a sidebar because it helps with the T4 production, which then helps with conversion, and it helps with maintaining your thyroid hormones. And without it, it can be debilitating. Your thyroid, if your thyroid's not cooperating with the rest of our body, you could have adrenal dysfunction, you could have fatigue, you could have depression, weight gain, muscle aches, your hair could fall out, low libido, brain fog. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with your thyroid. So in preparation, you could just remove the fluoride as starting as a small action step from everything that you're consuming, and it would be very, very helpful for you. All right, wrapping up the chemical self, right? Before we move on to the next two, and they will not be nearly as long. Our health is truly a combination of things that we put in our bodies. It's a combination of the food, the water, right? The things that we consume, and our exposure to toxins and our body's ability to detoxify efficiently. That is what makes up the chemical self. Working with your functional medicine practitioner, with your coach, with your doctor, you can ensure that you're receiving the proper testing and the comprehensive healing strategies to support that you deserve to have optimal health, you guys. I want you to have optimal health. I want you to be aware of like what leads to autoimmune diseases, because for many of us, we already have them, but that doesn't mean our kids have to have them. Or if your kids have them, like my kid, I have a daughter who has Crohn's disease and celiac disease. Her Crohn's disease has been in remission for about 5 years. But we do all of this stuff, right? I'm talking about fluoride-free toothpaste. We're talking about organic food. We're getting organic food delivered. We're always gluten-free. We're doing, vegan milks. And there's so many things that we just do on a daily basis because life is so much more important, right, than taking the easy road. I'd rather be 100 and have vitality and have optimal health and know that I had to do a little extra work every day than to be dead when I'm 40 because I ate McDonald's every day of my life. Not to like bad rap McDonald's. I ate it as a child. I wouldn't touch it now. But like you've got to sometimes think about like, yeah, you got to cook. Yeah, you got to get up and make breakfast. You got to think like yesterday I was ordering Instacart because I needed groceries and I didn't want to like just do drive-through, right? There's things you have to do, but it is so important for our health. We're going to move on. These will go a little bit quicker. So the physical component of our health, the other side of that triangle, right? Physical component of our health is a bit more straightforward. Most of us think about it already. It encompasses the physical activity, the integrity of your muscles, and quite literally the mechanics of your body. There is a common misconception that as we age, our body naturally declines. We hear it all the time, right? Your doctor may even say, oh, that's just part of aging. Your body's going to break down anyway. You're going to be a little slower. Oh, that knee pain, that's just part of aging, right? They're so wrong. They're so very, very wrong. I actually saw a thing yesterday where there was a 73-year-old woman who started going to the gym at like 73, and at age 74, she looked like a different person. She looked younger. And I've seen it in my own clients. When they start doing 20 minutes of walking, 20 minutes of just getting off the chair, off the couch, they just feel better. Their joints get better. Like, it is huge night and day difference. So don't let age be your excuse. As we age, we can begin to exercise less. And then what happens is, it due to exercising less, you make bad choices, you get too busy, you use busyness as an excuse, you take on this sedentary lifestyle, and your lifestyle then breeds this whole serious health issue, and you end up with muscle atrophy, right? And you end up with muscles not working, and then you end up with joint issues and joint pressure and decreased flexibility, and then you end up with all this other stuff, and it just goes downhill. It can get so bad. What you really have to do is just keep moving. Just keep moving. It's really that simple. You may not feel like lifting, you may not feel like cardio, but can you take a walk? Can you do a yoga? Could you at least stretch? Could you, right? You just have to keep moving. And if you've stopped moving because of the pain, I would encourage you to start with seated exercises, and then start with walking, maybe just the mailbox. And then maybe in a week or two, you walk to the end of the street. And then maybe a few weeks later, you like very slowly start to implement some movement in your life. Just take up dance, right? Take up something you think you might enjoy, because you've got to move, or the complications are just going to continue to get worse. And so you can introduce different types of exercises. You can start where you're at. This is what I just mentioned. Making those small changes, determine what your goal is, work with a coach to set your goals, and then have an accountability partner or somebody you walk with every day. There are these two older women in our neighborhood every morning, doesn't matter how cold it is. I've seen them in scarves, hats, snow boots. They walk together every morning. They look so happy. They're out there having their conversation, and they're just on their walk. And it's encouraging to see. Like, they got to be in their almost 70s, I'm telling you, and they're still out there walking no matter what in the Chicago winter. It's so encouraging. You guys can do the same thing. Health takes time. Just know that and schedule it in. Some other ideas could be, you could take a bike. You could go for a bike ride. You could actually do post-dinner walks with your spouse or your friend. Dancing, we mentioned. Taking the stairs, if you've got stairs. And then parking further away when you go to the store or you go to the office, and walking into the building. So my question to you is, in the comments, you can go ahead and write this. How are you going to schedule movement into your days going forward? I'm yawning because movement for me starts at 5 a.m. in the morning, and we had a time change. And so my body is still adjusting. I'm still waking up, and that is when my movement is. My movement is super early in the morning as the sun rises. It's beautiful. So now we're going to talk about the emotional self, right? The third point of our triangle. The emotional component to self is the one that's most often ignored. People think diet, exercise, they think toxins, exercise, like they think detox, exercise, but you don't always think about the emotional perspective. And so that is why it's the most often ignored. And yet it is so important, because it completes the triangle. It's the rest of what happens. You are what you think, right? And you need to remember that. If you do not believe you can recover, it is likely that you will not recover from your condition. But on the other hand, if you have hope, if you have positivity, if you have gratefulness and gratitude for your well-being and for your health and your vibrance, it is very likely that you're going to recover, and you're going to recover so much faster because you've got that positive mindset. You're going to be able to overcome your health complications. You're going to learn how to live through them and be a survivor, but also be a thriver. And being that thriver is what's so important. That is what I truly love to see in women. I love to see when they've come out the other side of 9 weeks or 12 weeks of coaching, and they're like these two women here in this picture. They're like these new people. They have their energy back. They feel amazing. Maybe they can, one lady had swelling in her hands, and now she can like do her needlework again. I worked with another client who had feet issues, and it hurt to walk, right? And she had young children. And by the time we were done working together, she did not have any issues in her feet. She was doing exercise. She was going to mommy dates. She was doing all this great stuff. And she was even wearing heels. And so the inflammation in her feet had just resolved itself. And it just, her attitude, her body, her emotional set had changed. It was awesome. So I love seeing that happen. I love then having those people just tell their stories. Some of the things that you can do when it comes to an emotional set is you want to make sure you feel relaxed. You want to be able to manage your stress, and it's so important. But you also don't forget to love yourself, guys. Self-love, hashtag self-love. I love saying that. You have to love yourself, and it comes from that love of self that your emotional side will start to come back to you, okay? There are things that you can do, right? Sick and tired of being stressed. Let's talk about some things you can do so you're not stressed. Being in a chronic state of stress is what can breed disease. It can bring on the autoimmunity. It can bring on the inflammation, because our mental stress can contribute to physical stress, which will contribute to physical illness and ailments. So what can you do to get rid of the stress? You could try deep breathing, right? Implement some deep breathing. Do some exercising. Go for a walk. Practice some yoga. Go get a massage. Go to a sauna. Go get an infrared sauna treatment. Do a meditation. You could make art. You could be creative. You could go out and hug a tree. Or you could even spend time with people you love and just like absorb their energy for a while. What are some of the other things that you guys have done to like de-stress? I am loving de-stressing ideas lately. I would love to hear more. First and foremost, though, when it comes to taking action, right, like kicking all that out of here, getting your fitness back, getting your life back, and getting your health back, you have to identify what's unique about your body so you can treat it, right? And you need to treat it accordingly. Everybody, like I said, is unique. Everybody has their own way that they need to treat their health. Everybody has their own probably unique deficiencies. And so luckily, there are other things that you can do to amplify your health right now. Besides just going and getting your blood work done, I would encourage you to do all of it. But here's some of the like action things that you could do right now. And I've got a huge, huge list. So you could try intermittent fasting. You could go grain or dairy or processed food free. You could change your diet and only do whole foods for a while. You could try an elimination diet. You staying hydrated, right? Fiber, quality probiotic. Taking a digestive enzyme to help aid you in digestion, avoiding unnecessary antibiotics, detoxifying, practicing breathing exercises, exercising regularly, connecting with other people, being in community, being sure that you get enough sleep, resting when you need it, having a hobby that you actually love and you enjoy and gives you great, like just appreciation and accomplishment. Those are the hobbies that are awesome. And then finding something that makes you happy, that will make you healthy. Those are the things that you can do. I do want to thank you for this time. I want to talk to you about a few things before we go. I do have one last piece of advice for you as well. Do not pick and choose through the process. You have to do all of these things we talked about. You have to do all of it in order to have a truly holistic experience, but to have the experience of productivity in your health, you need to do all of the aspects, okay? You can't just diet. You have to diet and the exercise. You have to remove the toxins. You've got to focus on the emotion altogether. And that can be overwhelming. And so because you've stayed with us on this webinar for the evening, I want to offer you a couple of things. One is I want to offer you a free consultation. I sent an email. It'll be coming out in about 14 minutes, probably right when we're ending this call. It's got a link in it for you to sign up for a free consultation. It's a $75 consultation that you're going to get for free. You just click on the link, put in your information, and you pick the time on my calendar, and we will talk. What we want to talk about on this consultation, though, is I want to talk about the challenge week that we're offering. I want to talk about where you're at, what's unique about you, and what can we help you do in the week, and then forward on your path, right? Forward on your path to health. The challenge week is $37. It's the lowest we've ever really offered a challenge week. It's going to include your meal plan. It's going to include your recipes. It's going to include a grocery list, just like we always offer. It's also going to include our mobile app. So if you've never used our mobile app, you're going to get free access to the Thrive Clean mobile app. So you can talk, you can ask questions, you can post pictures, you can download your recipes, you can do all of it right from your phone, because anymore, most of us live on our phone. We're also going to have an accountability group. right? So we're going to support each other. And so if you're interested in being part of that challenge week, I want you to schedule the free consultation. I want to talk to you about how can I better serve you? How can I better help you on your journey so that you can get your autoimmune disease in remission? Now, again, I mentioned we are going to be sending this replay out in the morning. If there is a friend of yours or somebody else in your life who's facing something just like you are, and you want them to do it with you, send them this so they can watch it and make a decision. And they will also have the opportunity to leverage the challenge week, because we're not going to start until Monday. We're going to start Monday the 16th, and we'll have everything up and running for you. But I want you guys to be aware of that. I also want you to know that it's not about being perfect. There is no perfect approach for everybody. Not everybody's the same. You've got to get properly tested to know your body. You've got to properly know what's going on so you know what to treat. Not everybody's deficient in vitamin D, and so not everybody needs it, right? So you really need your blood work. It is vitally important. I will share with you my journey for just a minute and why I feel that these challenge weeks are so important. When I found out I had celiac disease, I was seeing a doctor at the time who believed in holistic health, what I now know is functional medicine. He believed that through mind, body, spirit, you could heal anything, including my infertility, because my infertility endometriosis doctor found the celiac disease, okay? And I had already been diagnosed with Crohn's at that point. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this ever going to work? And he said, you know, give it a week. Here's a list. He gave me a food of everything I was allowed to eat. That is a game changer. When you have a list of allowed foods and it's about 1,000 things and you can eat anything on it, it's like awesome. You can pick anything. But when you are given instead by a traditional doctor a list of do not eat, your brain thinks negatively and it doesn't work. So I was given a list of please eat these things. These are the allowed foods. And I went home and I threw away everything that wasn't on the list. But what was on the list was beautiful, vibrant stuff, things full of color, things that just tasted amazing. I did a challenge week. I went gluten-free, I went dairy-free, and I went sugar-free. Did I miss my coffee? I did. And at that point, I remember I was drinking like 4 cups of coffee a day back then, because that was my way of like trying to beat chronic fatigue. And it never really worked, but I was like so addicted to coffee. And I had a few rough days. I'm not going to lie to you. I had a few rough days. You'll have a few headaches. You'll take some Motrin. You'll get over it. But by the end of the week, I felt like I was like in my 20s again. And it was like crazy because I knew I wasn't, but I felt better than I did when I was 17, because when I was 17, my health was falling apart. I couldn't run. I couldn't participate. I dropped out of like sports. It was crazy. And so just within those 5 days, I felt so much better. I went on that plan and I did that in 2007 through the winter into the summer. I lost over 60 pounds. Those 60 pounds were inflammation. And then after I lost the 60 pounds, he continued to treat me. And within 9 months, we were pregnant. It was all because I actually focused on what mattered. I focused on the nutrition. I focused on removing the toxins. I focused on the mindset. And I did the exercise. I went to the gym. I went for walks. I remember me and Will got bikes that year and we would ride around the park. And there were just these things that I added to my life. And a lot of people would ask me, and they still ask me, like, how do you do it all? How does it fit in? There were things I gave up. I gave up television. I gave up, you know, like going out and hanging with friends and just playing trivia at the bar. I gave up things that didn't matter anymore because my health was so much more important. So there are these choices you have to make. And I say all of this to let you know that that's why a coach is important. I had a coach then. My coach is now one of my dear friends. I had a counselor, and there's nothing wrong or embarrassing about having a counselor. Sometimes you just need to go and vent and talk to somebody. And it was truly amazing. I want to give you that opportunity to have that same experience, to find your way, to find your healing. And that is what I would love for you to leverage in this week that we're giving you in this free consultation. So when you get the email here when we're done, click on the link, sign up, pick a time. We'll get on the phone for 15, 20 minutes. I want to get to know you. How can I serve you? How can I help you? And then we'll get you enrolled in the challenge week. On Monday, you'll just start eating differently. You'll start feeling better. We'll cheer each other on. There will be this whole wonderful group dynamic. And I am so encouraged to be able to help you with this, to help you have success in your journey. It's what I was made to do. It's why I'm here. Many of you don't know, but God gave me a second chance. I about died a few years ago and bled out. And ever since then, my passion and my direction has been to help more people heal because I got my second chance. So again, I want to say thank you. I do want to come back to the Q&A. Let me stop sharing. I am truly, truly grateful for those of you that have joined us tonight on this journey to learn more about the autoimmune matrix. I really appreciate your time. I will stop the recording, but I am going to answer questions. So if you're here, let me look at your questions, and then, yeah, thanks so much, guys. We got through all the content too.